You're watching the Intel Network and Edge V Summit series with our focus today on the visual cloud. How is edge computing shaping the delivery and optimization of visual experiences? Where are some of the most innovative use cases? And why is collaboration so important for new service creation? Well, joining me now to discuss these crucial issues are Bill Wohnoutka, who is Vice President, Global Internet and Content Delivery Services at CenturyLink, José Antonio Aranda, Innovation and Product Strategy Director at Cellnex, Chadie, Ghadie, who is Director of Business Development Communication Service Providers at Lenovo, and Lynn, Vice President, Network Platforms Group and General Manager, Visual Infrastructure Division at Intel. Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be here.
Lynn, what trends are we currently seeing from the media industries and video-based content? How are they shaping our visual experiences?
You know, I think just the way that we are doing this whole event is such a testament to some of the changes we've seen. Immersive and interactive content are things that we've talked about for many years. I know that we all tend to think about it from the perspective of wearing goggles and 360 experiences that feel a little isolating. But if you look at what we're all doing almost all day long now, we're interacting with people over video mediums, we're communicating information, we're marketing, we're doing summits. You're seeing so many things that we've talked about for many years, but in reality, thank goodness edge processing had been something we've all been working on already. Thank goodness we'd already had content caching, and many of the technologies are falling in place along with the network capacity and capabilities to make things like what we're doing today possible.
So how is edge computing actually shaping the delivery and optimization of these visual experiences?
I think the thing that's really exciting is edge computing is something that I think some of our panelists would say, hey, this is not necessarily new. It's been a necessity for a long time. And the application of the use case has just changed or evolved over time. And so you'll see things like video on demand with content caching so that people have a great user experience in terms of the movie catalogs and shows they're passionate about. At the same time, you see things like media analytics being combined both at the edge as well as at the back end to optimize the user experience, optimize the viewing experience, and then optimize the opportunity for advertisers to target audiences in a more and more refined way. That doesn't even get into things like some of our friends at the 5G edge and what they are looking at doing to lower latency, to add workloads and user experiences that really haven't been possible up until we've looked at that new frontier of that further to the edge.
Well, let's look at some examples now, and let's look at some of the innovation that's taking place today. Bill, if I can come to you first, how is CenturyLink actually transforming its CDN offerings? And can you give us some specific examples?
Sure. Well, CDNs today are really no longer about just caching content at the edge. I think optimization of video traffic has become table stakes, and really we're shifting towards offering our customers value-added services to better enable monetization. Our platform is increasingly about allowing our customers to deliver new services and new experiences, and we do that by allowing them to deliver significantly more edge application capabilities by incorporating their software and code into HTTP pipelines that allow them to affect the experience users are having with the web application or with their user management, and all the way out to positioning edge compute in the same locations that we offer CDN today, so that these customers can take advantage of the ability to provide new rich media experiences like AR and VR. So not just constrained to the capabilities that are there within sort of web applications, but actually enabling to deploy full new rich application stacks on bare metal as a service or in managed container environments.
And Bill, we're seeing an increase in the requirement for more differentiated services. how much of this has been driven by the growth in esports and some of the innovation that we're seeing from esports and their use of video?
Well, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to continue to extend the esports experience. I think esports was one of the first heavily consumed video experiences, but now the telemetry that's being made available so that viewers can actually immerse themselves in what the individual players who they're following are experiencing. Everything from telemetry around their physical state during the games, as well as how well they're actually conquering specific tasks within a game. Those have become, I think, table stakes for the future in terms of driving viewer immersion into esports. So the low latency and app synchronization are table stakes at this point, and really, enriching the experience so that the viewer is able to be fully immersed in what the player they're following is experiencing. That's really where I think a lot of these applications are headed.
Thanks, Bill. Jose, if I can turn to you, can you give us a brief background on Cellnex and also how you're working to accelerate the deployment of visual cloud experiences on the edge?
So Cellnex is a company that operates wireless telecommunications infrastructure. And we have presence in 8 countries in Europe. And we support the mobile operators in deploying 5G. So what we have been doing is working together with our customers, the mobile operators, to identify potential use cases that may generate revenues in the stream of security, tourism, education. We are also working on Industry 4.0 and rural areas and how the vehicle can be used in areas where there is no communication.
And can you give us any specific examples of what you're doing?
Yes, of course. I will give you 3 basic examples that we have been working on. Tourism. We have worked with the mobile operators to have the first 5G music festival in Europe. And here, using edge computing capacity from Intel and Lenovo, we have developed a solution where installing 360 cameras at the stage of the concert, we're able to record all what the band is viewing. And we transmit using 5G and edge computing capabilities to a different place far from the stage, where we have a booth and we have people having virtual reality glasses where they can experience as if they were part of the band. So this is an immersive solution. Second, we have been working with the mobile operators as well in the area of Barcelona to deploy different solutions to track people, or also applications related to education, and using the capacity of edge computing. And with augmented reality, we have been able to develop some games for the education system. And the last one has been on a connected car. And we have been working with the mobile operators to see how the communications from the car with a network can be used in different scenarios. Scenarios like an ambulance is coming and the ambulance sends a message to the network. The network broadcasts a message to all the cars so they know before they even hear the siren that they need to go to a sign. Or communications with the traffic light so the car drivers understand when the next red color traffic light will go, and then they save fuel. All of these things we have been deploying together with the mobile operators.
Absolutely fascinating. Chadie, if I can turn to you finally for our initial look at some of these use cases. Can you explain to us what Lenovo is doing with the visual experience at the edge and any use cases that you're involved with?
Yes, thank you so much. So we've obviously been working really closely with Intel on a variation of use cases that are related to edge in particular. Some of the work that Jose Antonio mentioned around AR, VR, V2V, V2X type applications. These are all things that Lenovo, is looking at, providing pre-integrated, validated solutions that leverage a lot of the key technologies in this space that help, the operators monetize basically these physical assets that they have and bring these use cases to market.
Great. And Lynn, you've been, as Chadie's just explained there, you've been working with Lenovo on some of these use cases.
Yes, yes. We have been doing a couple of select solutions, specifically with Lenovo as well as other partners. And I think the one thing that just is so amazing is the ecosystem had been preparing for the need to have these kinds of processing closer to the users, closer where data is being generated. And the in-vehicle analytics or some of the video analytics that are becoming really necessary as part of our new normal are things that we consider really important and are really excited to be collaborating with Lenovo on the next generation of these solutions.
And Chadie, what about some of the challenges that you've come across and experienced in deploying these edge deployments, and how do you overcome them? How do you address them?
Yeah, so one of the key things that we've seen is that edge computing really is going to be divided into multiple tiers. When we mean by multiple tiers is you're going to have edge compute at the far edge compute at the near edge, in some cases edge compute at an aggregate edge site. Each of these sites really have different characteristics, from power management, from the amount of power that's available, from the form factors that can be installed, from the thermals that these locations are subject to, as well as security and how to manage them. Right. So the other area is that we know that the closer you are to the user, the more restrictive you are in these with these specific attributes and these challenges. So we've developed basically a hardware portfolio that essentially addresses that, leveraging a lot of the key Intel technologies, but also introducing some additional physical security features that allow us to essentially onboard devices easily and securely without compromising essentially the data. And the other thing is that we know for a fact that different edge locations will have different requirements from KPIs or application requirements from a KPI perspective. So, in some cases, if you're deploying an edge compute site, for example, at a hospital or a healthcare facility, data privacy is an issue. So we need to address that. In some cases where you're deploying them for, say, V2V or V2X type applications for video analytics and video processing, latency is a challenge. And then, of course, not all these sites are connected with the same type of bandwidth. So you have basically bandwidth restrictions at all the various sites. So these are some of the challenges that we've seen in this space. And how we're addressing that is really leveraging a lot of the edge reference architectures that Intel has developed and we've adopted to essentially create a more modular, approach to how you consume edge, which essentially allows you to deploy different types of hardware at different types of locations, all managed from a central entity. So leveraging some of the security features that are part of the secure device onboarding, for example, from Intel, allows us to easily onboard devices securely onto the network and then hand them over to the different, to our Lenovo Open Cloud Automation, which is basically our infrastructure automation software. Ultimately, what we need is automation in edge, and that's one of the biggest areas that we're investing in terms of infrastructure automation, but also working with key partners such as Nearby Computing to essentially automate the onboarding of the different applications onto these edge platforms. We basically provide a mechanism to install an infrastructure that allows for multiple ISVs to be incorporated into this and allow, again, the operators to monetize the use cases around this.
Great. I wonder if I could pick up on the point you made about automation with our other two guests. Bill, the need to automate rapidly and securely and reliably and deploy at scale, is this a key concern?
It's absolutely a key concern. Our investment in data pipeline runs the risk of exceeding our investment in edge delivery, in so much as automation will be how customer success is defined, meaning our ability to keep customers up and running despite the fact that there are realities in the physical world with power and with capacity and with consumption. the real focus has been over the last couple of years, how do we build the right level of data pipeline and handle the velocity of data that's required to actually act on and automate to improve your repair and reduce your downtime. All of this has been work that we've worked closely with Intel on to really help us shape a profile of the right type of boxes to deploy, right type of Intel architecture to deploy at the edge to cope with the velocity we see that's absolutely required. And this is all near real-time activity for us and for others in the space to identify outliers and conditions that would lead to downtime and then eradicate those prior to those events actually occurring. So the architecting of that data pipeline is critical due to the potential costs that you have there, but working in consultative strategic road mapping with Intel and looking a couple of years out, we still see a path to economically build what's almost as important as the critical service that we're delivering itself.
Great, thanks. And Jose, can I ask you a similar question related to automation and related to building this architecture, building this pipeline?
Yes, we are working on different scenarios. We see an opportunity to provide the mobile operators infrastructure that are capable to provide flexibility when they approach to edge computing. And in the case of automation, we are exploring things like robotics and how robotics can be applied to Industry 4.0, scenarios like trying to identify an area in an industry like a warehouse and how to bring things from the warehouse to the production chain using a autonomous vehicle. And once is in the production chain, it's picked up by a robot. All of these scenarios are the things that we are trying to identify how operators can monetize and how they can benefit from these use cases and how the industry can see interest in 5G.
Now, these are big enough challenges without extra complications, but as we all know, the whole world has been put under enormous pressure at the moment with the COVID-19 crisis. Lynn, how do you think the networks and the service providers have coped during this pandemic?
First of all, I think that the service providers are doing an amazing job, especially given the fact that all of the usage profiles that they had planned on, they're getting thrown out the window. You can't tell if the bandwidth upload is from dad who's doing a video call, or if it's from the kids who are also doing video calls in class. When is the game happening? When is it video on demand? It's a really unpredictable environment. And so despite the fact that we haven't seen as much bandwidth as we would like, we would love to have better quality of service as it's available. And the service providers working incredibly hard to make that possible. At the same time, given the level of unpredictability and how quick everything flipped to work from workplaces to work from anywhere, I think they've done an amazing job. I do think this gives them a platform from which they can plan for the next user experience or from the next work from anywhere situation that we all might be coming up to in the near future or even long term.
Absolutely, well said. And we'll come back to collaboration in just a few minutes. But Bill, if I can turn back to you, what are you seeing at the moment in the network and the different pressures being put on service providers? How are you seeing your traffic change, for instance?
Well, the post-pandemic world has been a pretty exciting place to live. We kind of had a confluence of significantly more of the world's population being at home, and then the launch of several new product offerings in both the online gaming space as well as in the video space. In particular, we've seen the popularity of free-to-play and free-to-all games in the AAA game space. This is where titles that were traditionally had a paywall to start to play them became free in the same time frame, and this has impacted for the performance of the internet globally. We've certainly heard from many of the carriers in many countries around the world, as well as some of the regulatory groups that govern those communications in those countries, and it's really underscored the importance of tight collaboration. In this case, between content delivery networks, game distributors, and ISPs, it's become critical during this period of time for us to build software-defined controls to help reduce the impact of very, very popular free-to-play games, and the impact that those can have during business hours on commerce for a nation, or and the impact that those can have for family hours, where you have a lot of homes that are unwrapping for the first time their first OTT subscription. So the level of work that was done throughout the pandemic to continually observe where problems were occurring and then apply software and apply collaboration between parties that don't always collaborate well has been just critical. Specifically for me, having really strong on-the-ground relationships with ISPs around the globe has been critical. Taking those phone calls at 2 a.m. is very important. If you're having an impact on somebody's business day in another country, being responsive to that has become of utmost concern. With that said, I think that the speed of deployment and the growth of interconnection between ISPs globally and collaboration between CDN partners and game download customers to really control and get this traffic to have a lower impact while still preserving user experience and the value proposition of a free-to-play game. I mean, the value prop there is that, Guy, I'm going to download the game and you're going to download the game, and hopefully we get it at the same time so that we can meet online and play. So we've really worked hard with all of those parties, and all of those parties worked hard as well with each other to try to preserve, the bandwidth that we have for best use at the highest peak hours.
Thanks, Bill. And Jose, what are you seeing from your service provider customers, and how they're adapting and having to cope in this time?
Yes, we see that the mobile operators have been working in a collaborative way to provide a service and to cope with all the increase of traffic that we have been suffering. As it has been previously mentioned, there has been a change of the way we see things and the way we do things. One example is most of the companies has allowed the possibility for their employees to homework, and the home working in some countries have gone from 10% to nearly 95%, and that has implied an increase of calls from home of 50%. Also, data consumption as well. Having kids at home, most of them have been connected to the applications, and all of these together with the gaming have shown that the mobile operators have had a very excellent response. Also, they have been working and the mobile operators and together with companies like us in providing temporary infrastructure in places like hospitals or temporary hospitals during the pandemic. Also, we manage things like the television broadcasting, and we have seen an enormous increase of consumption of digital terrestrial TV, mainly as it has become the TV as the main information channel. And the last thing that we see that has also responded well on the network side is the support to all the security forces that have had to operate during the pandemic.
Great, thanks very much. What we're hearing a lot of here is the importance of collaboration. That really brings it into focus. Chadie, can I bring you in at this point? And let's talk about collaboration. Let's talk about partnerships. We're all here, we're all partners. We're all working in the same industry. We're all got the same ultimate goals here. How is your relationship with Intel helping you? What is it that Intel brings to you from a business and strategic point of view?
Yeah, so there's no secret about it. Intel and Lenovo have been collaborating for a really long time. Intel is one of our key strategic partners when it comes to not just the hardware, but also on some of the software and solutions that we've adopted as part of our portfolio. As you mentioned, collaboration is key, especially as we're defining new use cases around Edge. We're learning, different requirements from the field, different, not just from a hardware perspective, but also a software perspective, and also on economics and how do I monetize this and how do I make these use cases really work for our customers where they could actually generate revenue. Things like being able to have different types of acceleration technology, for example, at different locations, and where does it make sense to essentially, perform these types of accelerations. You can't obviously put, acceleration technology at every edge site, as mentioned previously, due to some of the limitations. So, addressing that with Intel and some of the solutions that they brought together. Also, this is more from a hardware perspective, just beyond what we have in terms of, the different processors and the different acceleration technologies. On the software side, we've also looked at, and we've also developed quite a few solutions with Intel, in particular around, some of the, like I mentioned, the onboarding of securely of solutions. So Lenovo developed this application called ThinkShield, where you could, for example, transport an edge node to a location where the drives are locked. Once that device is basically powered on, the GPS coordinates are essentially validated that it's in the right location. The installer can authenticate against this app, and it uses basically the secure device onboarding platform that Intel has developed in the back end. Beyond that, we've also looked at as I mentioned, a lot of the edge architectures, and we've developed quite a few of those with Intel, in particular around the modular converged reference edge architecture, which essentially allows the onboarding of a variation of technologies and a variation of ISVs onto this. So leveraging software solutions such as OpenVINO and openness have helped us tremendously develop basically our portfolio and basically the solutions that we've developed around this.
Great, thanks very much. I'd like to ask Bill and José as well. José, I'll start with you. What are the key areas where you're working with Intel? How is that relationship actually helping you strategically and from a business sense?
Yes, we have been working during the last few years with Intel to understand what are the capabilities of the chipsets that they provide, and we have signed a strategic alliance to use their chipsets to introduce to edge computing, and together with Lenovo, that they have included all these chipsets and using the newest Intel reference architecture, we have been able to build the basis of our edge computing solution. So based on the hardware, we have been able to, on the top of that, provide additional layers like orchestration with a third-party company like Nearby.com, and even the possibility of understanding whether the mobile operators are willing also a company like us to enter in providing additional value-added services together with all these three companies.
Great, thanks. And Bill, where's the advantage of the Intel partnership in what you're doing with your CDN?
Well, we compete in a market that is doubling its traffic and capacity requirements every year and faces intense price compression in double digits, low double digits. So having Intel's architects and product managers as a core component of our technology road mapping efforts has just been absolutely critical in helping us to achieve our revenue objectives and continue to improve our unit cost basis so we can compete effectively in a very, very fierce and fast-growing edge delivery ecosystem. It's been absolutely instrumental to shaping, a very profitable business for us, and it's indispensable to our technology road mapping cycles.
Thank you, Bill. And Lynn, it's encouraging, that you've got these partners, these terrific partners, and it's not a one-way street; it's two-way.
I think the most important thing for Intel, given the breadth of our portfolio, is that we don't want our partners to feel like it's one size fits all. We want to sit down and understand the user experience against the constraints of the environment. So edge form factors and power relative to the need for processing at the edge, relative to the need for quality and bandwidth. And all of that is such a unique service experience that sitting down in a two-way conversation with the entire supply chain for a given service is the only way that we can continue pushing forward with better and better solutions that bring better and better services and user experiences.
A final question to each of you, if I can. Let's jump forward. Let's move sort of the next decade, 10 years or so. How do you think the industry is changing in terms of how it will deliver visual experience to their users? Jose, let's start with some predictions from you. How do you think this visual delivery is going to change?
Yes, I expect that in the next 10 years, things will go around visual content and things that we see now as experimental, like virtual reality or augmented reality, will become some of the things that you will be used to have on regular basis. But we expect also evolution on things like holograms, and that virtual age will enable also these scenarios, and even a mixture of not only visual, but also mixed in with other senses like smell or like hearing, to configure what it is begun to be called the Internet of Senses.
Great. And Chadie, what are you expecting to or hope to see in the next 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, as mentioned by previous panelists, there's a lot of exciting use cases that are being worked on now, whether it's gaming, AR, VR. I believe that the way these applications are going to be consumed and used will improve and drastically improve user experiences. Again, in the various applications, there'll be a lot more user interaction and involvement in a lot of these type applications. And I think edge computing is going to be key for a lot of that.
Great. And Bill, what do you think?
Well, I think social is becoming increasingly important as we're settling into a new reality of social distancing. So I think the combination of social and entertainment is going to be very, very important over the next couple of years. If we look further beyond that, you start to really incorporate a lean forward experience for participants that's tactile, where there is an ability to interact directly with the content that you're experiencing. But I think, for starters, really getting the combination of social immersion in lean back content is the first step, and then we start to see more tactile involvement of users and sense of smell, sense of touch. Those are all going to be highly dependent on both low latency between compute resources and where users are located, as well as really having heaps and heaps and heaps of processing power in the right places, along with RAM and the devices that are required on the consumer side. But I think we see the combining of social and entertainment in a way that makes these activities even more immersive and a lean forward experience ultimately for participants.
Great. And Lynn, finally, how do you expect the visual experience to evolve over the next 10 years?
There's been an ongoing trend with services of more immersive, more customized, and more interactive. And you can see that with some of our kids that, I don't know about the rest of you, but I have problems getting my children to sit down and watch television with me, but they want me to watch YouTube channels with them. And so that push to personalization, self-selecting, curating your own content, being able to choose your own viewpoint, your own experience, as we're seeing with some of the interactive concerts, that is only going to get more so with things like volumetric scanning, as well as with the create your own content and pick your own experience that is becoming pretty normal when you look at the use of game engines and you look at the interactive gaming space as a new normal for how many people are choosing their entertainment.
Very exciting. So much to look forward to. For now, though, to all four of you, thank you very much for joining us on the programme today. And don't forget, you can watch more interviews and discussions on the Visual Cloud right here as part of the Intel Network and Edge V Summit series. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.